Howdy folks, today we're going to be making fast and easy low-carb pho, and I don't put something in the fast and easy category unless it is. Pho is a kind of Vietnamese soup. It's commonly made with a beef stock, and it's very, very tasty. So let's meet the ingredients that we're going to be using. The only really high-carb ingredient that's in normal pho is rice noodles. And we have an excellent low-carb substitute for that, which is these shirataki noodles. This package has only 2 grams of digestible carbs. And so the first thing I'm going to do once I start making the soup is I'm going to drain and rinse these and then boil them, which is what it says to do on the packet, and it helps with the texture and aroma and taste and so forth. We're also going to be using an onion. Now you can use onion to taste. I happen to like a lot of onion, so I'm going to use a good bit of this, although obviously not the whole thing. We are going to be using roast beef because we're going to be making a kind of pho that is known as pho bo, which means beef pho. If you want to make chicken pho, you can use chicken, and that's known as pho ga. We're also going to be using some pre-made beef stock, and we will not need to add salt to this because American broth producers love to add salt for us, so we won't need to be adding any of that. We will, however, be adding a little bit of sweetener. I use this new stevia sweetener. It comes in these little packets, and we're going to be adding one of those to make the broth a little sweeter. We also have some representatives here from the Legion of Spicy Heroes, so let's do roll call and see which ones we're going to be using. One of them is onion powder, another is white pepper, another is ground cinnamon, another is ground cumin, another is ground coriander seed, and lastly and not leastly, ground ginger. So we've got a number of excellent spices we're going to use here. You don't have to use these spices if you don't like these or don't have them. You can use whatever you prefer, but these are the ones I'm going to be using. So let's get to cooking. All right, now while my noodles are boiling, what I'm going to do is put together the condiments that are usually served with this. They come, if you're in a Vietnamese pho restaurant, they'll come on a separate plate, and so that's how I'm going to present them here. And there are several I'm going to use. They're spices. Or 2 of them are spices, and one of them is my favorite spice, or one of my favorite spices, basil, which is very nice in taste and aroma, and it adds a lot to the soup. You just pluck the leaves and drop them into the soup when the soup is ready. Also, another spice that you often find served along with pho is mint. And I just love mint. And it's the same thing. You just pluck the leaves off and drop them in the soup. Then there are commonly bean sprouts that are served with the soup, and you just drop them into the soup, and they actually help you by providing a little extra rigidity. They help you eat the soup with chopsticks and so forth. You also use a spoon, and by the way, it's considered not only polite but complimentary to the chef if you slurp the broth. So remember that. And then the last little accoutrement I'm going to add here is a lime, and you just squeeze the lime juice into the soup. It's very nice. You can also use pre-prepared lime juice if you have that, or even lemon juice, but sliced lime is traditional. And so these are what we're going to be adding. One other thing that you commonly find in pho restaurants is they'll often have little sliced peppers, which are commonly hot enough to allow you to see through thyme. So if you're interested in doing any closed time-like curve experiments, be sure to check out those peppers. Unfortunately, I don't have any of them here today, but I may be adding some chili garlic sauce to my soup. It's also commonly served with things like hoisin sauce or oyster sauce or chili sauce, and so I may be adding some of that to my soup when I eat it. In any event, we've got all our accessories ready, and so let's see how the soup is doing. Okay, and I've drained and rinsed my noodles in cold water and put them in the bowl we're going to use for the soup. Now let's make the soup broth itself. What we're going to do is take our pre-prepared beef stock and pour that in to a saucepan. Then I'm going to add a shake of each of the spices. I'm not going to go nuts on this because I'm not making a whole lot. And that will just take me a second to get through each of the spices. And then, there we are. What I'm going to do next is add the sweetener that we talked about, the new stevia. And I guess that some kinds of stevia are kind of have a reputation of being bitter, but this advertises itself as not, and I haven't found it to be bitter. So if you're looking for a recommendation about what kind of stevia, new stevia, I've found to be quite satisfactory. Once I've got the spices in, I'm then going to take the onion, which I cut up, and I'm going to use about 1/4 of that big onion, just because, as I said, I like onion. And I'm going to drop it in, separating the individual slices so they make these very nice arcs that will mix in with the noodles and the bean sprouts and that I'll be able to pick up with my chopsticks. By the way, you might wonder, why am I using onion powder if I'm also putting onions in the soup? And the answer is that if I were taking a long time to simmer this, I wouldn't need the onion powder because the flavors of onion would get through the soup. But since I'm going to be doing this very quickly, I thought the onion powder would would help the onion flavor permeate the broth quicker. Last thing we're going to do is add our beef, and this is just sliced roast beef from the store. And you can add however much or little you prefer. By the way, since we're using shirataki noodles instead of rice ones, the beef is going to be the major source of calories for this. So this is not a very high calorie soup at all. And then we're going to turn on the heat for just a few minutes and let it all get nice and warmed up. And we're going to stir it occasionally, and I'll be back to do the big reveal. And here we have it. I just heated the broth with the ingredients for a few minutes until it got to just the beginning of a boil, and then I poured it over the noodles and mixed them up, and it's all ready to eat. I can smell the cinnamon and the onion and the ginger, and it all just is really marvelous. And so I hope you'll try this. It's very delicious, even if you've never had it in a restaurant. It's a very, very excellent type of soup, and it helps us understand and appreciate the flavors and textures of East Asian cuisine. So hope you'll try it, and bon appetit.